business. Because as we talk to more and more of our customers and our prospects, they really embrace the idea of the old state of compliance isn't working, because it's about what not to do, and it's such a bigger conversation than that. And so we're really starting to dig into what can we do to help companies really step beyond the ethics and compliance program. How can we help leverage technology for the ethics and compliance officer to be able to build a stronger relationship with their internal partners? What's the possibility of how we could use technology for HR to drive ethics into their business from a hiring and promotion and incentive perspective? What is the CFO needing from a technology perspective to make sure that they're making the right decisions from an ethical perspective and managing the finances? And so having those kinds of conversations has been really exciting, and thinking about not only where to take the conversation, but what's the future of technology for this space.
Oh, I think that's really interesting, that sort of the intersection of those things and how technology can help companies meet that goal. I'm going to put that on my list to revisit with you. I'm sort of, my editorial calendar is a little full for the next few months, but I feel like that could make a really interesting bylined article by your team. So let's get the Q&A actually published and then talk again, because I feel like that's something that not everyone is talking about. And I know, Jordan, that we had talked about a potential bylined article, and I feel like that's where that seems like a really sweet spot for you guys, where you could talk about some of the neat things you are doing and really add value to the conversation.
Oh, fantastic. We'd love to have that conversation with you.
Awesome. I'll put it on my list so that you guys don't have to remember. And I'll take a look at the editorial calendar and when it would make sense, and then give you guys an email about that. So, but for today, what I would love to talk to you about is codes of conduct and this idea of moving to a more sort of digital code of conduct. And I think it probably makes sense to focus our conversation on what Conversant did with its code of conduct, but I'm also open to hearing your ideas as someone who helps other companies build this. Just as we sort of talk about it, I think we'll be clear about where it makes sense to talk about your projects and where it makes sense to talk about others. But I think if we could start by, if you could just give me sort of a general description of the projects that you underwent and I think are still undergoing, or are you guys done of sort of redesigning your code of conduct?
We're done. Let me give you some background. So I joined the company about a year and a half, and that was one of the first things that I wanted to accomplish, was develop our code of conduct. But I decided I needed to take a step back and really embrace the culture and understand what was working and what wasn't, and where we wanted to take the company in the future. And so early spring last year, that's when I started development of the code. And the purpose of our code was a little different. We had this vision where we wanted the code to really be the embodiment of the culture, to have that line in the sand of what those expectations of our teammates were, on how they interacted with each other, how they supported our customers, how they interacted with greater society, and what were those rules of the road. So I've been in this space for a long time. I've written many codes, and I will admit that some of my first codes were very typical. They were, those 90-page hardcover printed legalese documents that basically the lawyers wrote, and we put some pretty pictures on them and sent them out to our employees. That was the standard. That's how all companies created codes of conduct since they started in the late 80s. And but what we know is that's not a way to engage the workforce. And I can't tell you how many times I've stood up at an orientation and talked about the importance of ethics and the code of conduct, and you kind of get this glazed look on people's faces. You hand out the hard copy, and they say they're going to sign the back page, or they do an online attestation, but you really don't have any sense for whether they're really understanding what you're trying to get at. And because these documents were so long and written by a team of lawyers, it wasn't relevant to the individual employee as to when they're in the course of their day and they're making 100 different decisions, how can they apply those standards along the way? And so that was my vision with our code, to make it very reflective of the Conversant culture in our tone, how we talked about what we wanted to do, and have it be more of an aspirational document, recognizing that we're not perfect, and so there are some aspects of the code that we may not be 100% there, but this is where we want to get to. And we looked at it from how are we engaging with each other from a workplace perspective, how are we engaging our customers, and that's not only in how we interact and treat them in living up to our commitments to them, but also in a preservation of the relationship. We want to be a trusted advisor and partner to our customers, and that means trust on all levels, knowing that they can count on us, that we'll hold to our commitments, and that we'll preserve their data and keep it safe. Because at the end of the day, that's our biggest risk to Conversant, is if we had a data security breach. So that was something that we had to ensure that, because we wanted our code, even though we're not a public company, we wanted to make sure that our code was publicly accessible. So this was going to be our statement to the world, whether it was to our customers, our third parties that we work with, or even prospective employees that want to come work for us. We wanted them to be able to see who we were as a company and what those baseline expectations were. So we definitely had a different perspective. We wanted to keep it short, engaging, involve employees. Most companies don't use their employees within the code because there's this fear that once you put an employee's face in something that's either on a website or especially in hard copy, if there's an ethical issue, then you have to remove them. We decided in order for our employees to really feel like they have skin in the game and to feel their own personal ownership of the code and to protect it, we wanted to include them. So I don't know if you had a chance to go through it yet, but one of the things that we're really proud of is including our teammates throughout the whole site, but especially from a values perspective. If you go through and watch those videos, those weren't scripted. We specifically looked for teammates that embody those values and asked them what that value meant to them. And so we're really, really proud that our culture of who we are and who we want to be really shines through on that. We wanted it to be engaging because at the end of the day, my vision for Conversant, as well as all companies, is I really think that the future of code is having this interactive perspective, and to have the code as really the front door to the ethics and compliance program, for it to be that one-stop shop, that if you have a question or a concern or need some more information, this is your one place that you can go as a resource, and it takes you down to the level that you need. So whether it's just the high-level overview, in our interactive code, we kept it at a very high level. But then if you want more information, you can dig a little deeper, and it connects to the policy. We're in the process of loading training in as well. So if they need even additional information, they can dig down to the level of content that they need. One of the features that I'm really proud of is our interactive robot, because I'm a one-person shop, so I want to make sure that whether it's 2 o'clock in the morning or a Sunday afternoon, if one of our teammates has a question, not only can they call the helpline, but if they want to try to work through the issue themselves and figure out if they have a bigger concern they need to report, they can go to Cooper, our robot, and he takes them through a series of questions. It's like an ethical decision-making tree, so they can determine whether they need to report this issue or get some additional help, or maybe they can solve the problem themselves.
That makes a lot of sense to me. I have done a little looking at your code of conduct, but not a ton. Could you just describe it for me in words, what it looks like? I think that would be helpful for when we're writing the piece.
Sure. Interactive.
So it's internet-based, correct? It lives on
yes.
your website? And how did you decide to make it a web-based code rather than, doing some sort of PDF? It sounds like because you wanted it to be interactive, but could you tell me more about sort of that decision-making process and why you think that's beneficial?
So the reason why we went to interactive is because I don't believe that a PDF version of a code does anything more than a hard copy. And I really had this vision for an engaging site that, almost from a gamification standpoint, that it would draw the different types of our diverse workforce in going and seeking out information. But the interactive piece, what my goal was to have back-end analytics. So the way we have designed our interactive code is that every click in the site we can do a report on. So that generates data for me to identify where that flow of traffic is. And this is where we get into the concept of proactive ethics and thinking about the future of the program. So with the way that we have defined our interactive code, I can go into our back-end analytics and I can see where employees are clicking into the code. So I understand what level of engagement they have. So if they go to a certain page and only go to that top page, I know they've gotten a general overview. But if they've clicked down into a video or to a scenario that explains what that behavior looks like that we're looking for, or clicking to a training, then I know that they've gotten a deeper depth of that information. Conversely, I also know if there's a piece of the code that isn't receiving traffic, then I know that that's an opportunity for me from a communication and awareness standpoint, that the workforce needs some additional awareness of that subject matter. But the beauty of the data analytics is that I can also see where there are patterns coming up. So for instance, on the sexual harassment page, if I see that a particular team is going to the sexual harassment page, but I haven't received a harassment claim into the ethics office, that's a red flag for me, because this work team obviously has some questions or concerns regarding workplace harassment. And so I know that there's an issue bubbling up. So it's an opportunity for me to engage my HR partner and figuring out if there's a potential issue within that team. Now, the way we've constructed our code, it's anonymous. So I can't see that particular employee has gone into a certain part of the site, and I've done that intentionally to protect their anonymity and confidentiality.
So you can't see a particular employee, but you can see based on region or department or something of that nature?
Yes, we can see total company as well as region and department if it's over a certain size.
And so then when I'm clicking through, Jordan helpfully sent me the link, and so when I'm clicking through on our decisions and down into your various policies, then you see that that's an outside person looking at your information.
Yes.
Is that part of, so that's fascinating, Katie. How cool. That's really interesting. What an interesting way to have your code be so much more than it would be if it were sitting in a PDF on someone's desk. Do you see that your employees are using it? Is it being used as much as you would have expected, less than you would have expected? What have you learned from that data other than this particular region might, have an HR issue happening?
So I'm a data nerd, so I've enjoyed looking at the back-end analytics. It's a great way to show the effectiveness of your program, because I can look in there and see after I've sent out a communication, or there's a blurb in our newsletter, or Patrick has said something at Stand Up. If I see an uptick in the traffic to the code, then I know our messaging is working. So that's been really powerful for us. Thankfully, our traffic has been very consistent. So as I have a communication strategy in place for the whole year, so we have regular communication and training that's getting pushed out to the team in a variety of different ways, and and for that intention to keep it top of mind and to build in that muscle memory that yes, this is an ongoing tool. It's a resource. It's an organic site that I have the flexibility and the freedom to update it and change it as we need to and add additional content. So it's not something static that an employee knows that it's not going to change in the next 5 years. And so it's exciting. Now we're still in the early stages, but so far the data is really positive.
And so you mentioned your communication strategy. So are you using those ethics and compliance communications to drive people back to the code? Is that part of your strategy, do regular reminders that this resource is there for your employees?
Absolutely. So I have built it into every piece that I communicate. So if I'm doing an in-house training or a presentation about anything regarding ethics and compliance, I always mention our code, and I have that link. With our new hires, in fact, I just completed it today. I spend dedicated time with our new hires once a month, specifically talking about the code and bringing it to life and what it means to them and how to use it. So we've gotten really great feedback from that. Every communication, so we have a corporate newsletter that goes out once a month. We will touch on a topic, and there's a link to that topic within the code. So there's always that push and pull to keep it top of mind. And then we've also given them tangible objects to remind them. So when we launched the code, we had pens created that had our URL for the site on there. We have Post-it notepads that we give out to our new hires. So we look for creative ways to do things to keep it top of mind. Colorado is very big on stickers. So one of the things that we did last fall for National Ethics and Compliance Week to keep the code top of mind, we created a series of stickers with quotes from Wei Chen and Martin Luther King, and we passed those stickers out, and they're on water bottles and whiteboards, and pretty much everyone has them on their laptops. But the great thing is the URL for the code is on the bottom of every sticker.
I like that. And I think that Wei Chen should know that you're putting her in the same sentence as Martin Luther King Jr. I feel like that's a life goal. That's fantastic. I laughed that you're doing stickers on water bottles and laptops, because I thought the branding of the swag that you gave out at the Converge conference was so beautifully Colorado. my hiking bag and my cozy blanket, which I get rid of a lot of swag, and my house is Conversant branded. I use that backpack.
Oh, that's perfect.
So,
What's funny is
stuff matters.
It does. It's those little reminders of where to go, and maybe it's the employee has just experienced something, and they look down on their computer and they see that one little nod about the code, and that gives them an opportunity to go back out to the site and gather more information and see if they need to seek some guidance. And that's the whole point of the code, is to put the information in the hands of the employee and meet them where they're comfortable.
That makes a lot of sense to me. Are there any challenges to having the code in this digital format that people should think about when sort of designing their program?
Well, if you're a big multinational company and you have different languages, that's definitely going to be more of a challenge. It's not an insurmountable hurdle. It just makes it a little more complicated because each site will have to be translated and localized. I think the biggest challenge for most cultures is just keeping it top of mind. The larger the organization, companies really have these turf battles over real estate on their company intranet. So making sure that your code has the right visibility within the organization is really key. And that can be a challenge because you really have to partner with your internal stakeholders like corporate communications or your PR firm or whoever is helping with that, because it's so critical to make sure that you have that right level of visibility and support all the way up to the top of the house.
That makes a lot of sense. And what about this idea? You mentioned that some people are hesitant to involve employees, lest the employee turn out to be the corrupt employee in the company, which I think is kind of comical because I feel like those people probably aren't volunteering to be in your videos, probably. But one would hope. But how do you keep track of making sure something that uses employees stays relevant? If an employee leaves the company, do you redo the video? Is that sort of part of your process?
It is. So we have an evaluation. We do it regularly just to make sure that the folks that we're featuring on the site are relevant and one, that they're still at the company and they didn't leave for a bad reason. We at Conversant, we personally have the opinion that if someone has left on good terms and they were a true embodiment of the Conversant culture and they've just moved on to a bigger and better opportunity, we want to embrace that success, and so we don't feel like that's a critical need to remove that person from the site immediately. Now, over time, we would, but not immediately. Now, if someone is separated for cause, then we would make that change. And we review the site about once a month just to make sure that we're on top of things.
Okay, that makes sense. Well, I think you've done sort of a masterful job of answering my questions without me having to ask very many. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you think would be important if you were a company sort of beginning this process of revitalizing your code and making it more modern and interactive?
One recommendation that I have is that they step outside of the ethics and compliance bubble and talk to their internal partners like HR and communications and the different business heads, and talk to a variety of employees, different age groups, backgrounds, really looking at it from a diversity of thought perspective and identifying, one, what do you want the code to really say about the company? There's a school of thought that the last several years a code should be values based, and I think that's where most companies, they're stuck in this rut now of, it's basically still a legal document, but they talk about it from a values perspective, but it still feels like the Ten Commandments, thou shalt not do this. And I really think that it's helpful for them to step back and talk to a good cross section of the company to understand, what do they want their culture to look and feel like, and what resonates with their employees, and really spend the time to make the voice and the visual design really match the company. Because if it's a true embodiment of the culture, then it feels good and it feels right.
I think that's really insightful. And I think that is where I think some companies do that easily, right? And some companies don't. Like, I think some companies just get that, and some companies it's harder. So really thinking about that from the beginning feels like it can inform everything you're doing. Okay, I think, Katie, I have what I need. It is looking, so one thing into the next, right? I'm recovering from this hand surgery, and my senior editor, Megan, who I think that you met at ACI, is heading out on maternity leave. So we're going to be a little crazed again, but I'm thinking this will run in either March or April. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first get you the retaliation Q&A, which is really shaping up to be a nice article. I'll get you that for approval, and then I will probably turn to this a little bit later, and I will get you your quotes for approval from this too, and we'll only run what sort of is approved. I'm going to spend a little bit more time on your website, and I think I may try and have a couple of more conversations. And then I know we had talked about, is it Philip that I was possibly going to speak with for more of a technical angle?
Yes. Philip handles the product, and we're happy to set up a conversation with you and him. He can kind of walk you through the actual products and specs and details of that nature if you're interested, Nicole.
Yeah, I think that might be. Let me play a little bit on the website. I think it might be interesting just for my own personal background. I'm not sure how it would get integrated into the type of article that I'm writing. But I think it is a neat example. And I'm also playing with the idea of accompanying this series of articles at some point, doing some sort of compendium of different codes of conduct, because I think a lot of people don't even know where to start to look for different examples. And, I think it would be neat to include yours as an example of this type of code. So let me think about that, and when I may want to have a couple more conversations so that I can have a more intelligent conversation about sort of the back end and the mechanics of this, but I definitely have that in my mind. I haven't forgotten about you making that offer.
Okay. I'm happy to arrange if you want to chat with Philip. So just let me know what you're thinking there.
Okay, great. Well, thank you guys. I really appreciate it. And apologies for the delay on the Q&A. It has just been insane. So I appreciate you sort of hanging with me there and having another conversation before I've even got to use the notes from our last.
Well, thank you for your time, Nicole. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. Hey, Katie, any chance you're going to be at SCCE in Germany in March?
No, I begged out of that one, but I will be at Compliance Week in May. I assume you'll be going then?
We're back and forth about Compliance Week. Their press policy is a little challenging for us to get coverage at, so I may pop down for a day or so just because I think the networking is outstanding, but I haven't quite decided yet. But I'm sure we'll connect much before May.
Well, I'm in DC next week, so if you want to get together, I'm happy to.
I think that I probably will not be down that way next week, but let me know next time you're out here on the East Coast, and if we can make the timing work, I'd love to grab a cup of coffee.
Okay, great.
All right. Thanks, Katie. Thanks, Jordan. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, bye-bye.
Well. Bye.
Bye-bye.